All right, so today's deep dive. We're doing things a little differently.
Oh, how so?
Well, we're going all the way to Tel Aviv.
Fun.
But hold on, we're not just looking at buildings. We're actually kind of eavesdropping on a family chat about them.
Like architectural tourism, but with a personal twist.
Exactly. We've got Liat. She's a writer, and she's trying to, bring her dad, Nissim, into this century. He's an architect.
Ah, the old generational tech cap. I've been there.
Oh, tell me about it. She's documenting their talks about Tel Aviv's architecture, for her online followers.
I bet those are interesting conversations.
Well, let's just say her trying to explain Substack to him is something a lot of us can relate to, I think.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
But through all that, they're uncovering this amazing story of how Tel Aviv's architecture came to be, especially during the British Mandate period, like the early 1900s.
Ah, yes. That's when Tel Aviv really started to come into its own, architecturally speaking. A young city trying to balance global trends with a unique landscape and political situation.
And that's where her dad's perspective is pure gold. I mean, he's lived through these changes, designed buildings during that time. He can tell us why certain features became so iconic to Tel Aviv.
It's like getting a behind-the-scenes tour from someone who was actually there shaping the city.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Liat asked Nissim about this thing called the international style, which apparently had a huge influence on Tel Aviv. She'd heard it was all about function over just looking fancy. Is that really all it was, or is there more to it?
Layat's onto something there. It really wasn't just about looks. The international style, it did emphasize function, that's true. But it was kind of a reaction against how architecture was done before. Like before that, if a building was grand, it was all about making a statement, wealth, power.
So like giant cathedrals, opulent palaces, that kind of thing, designed to impress more than to actually work for the people inside.
Exactly. But then the early 20th century comes along, industrialization is booming, cities are packed with people. Suddenly you need buildings that are efficient, affordable, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I imagine a world recovering from a war isn't too keen on frivolous ornamentation anymore.
Exactly. All of a sudden it's about buildings that work for the people using them every day, not just ones that look impressive.
Which actually reminds me of something Nissim said about buildings that are beautiful from the outside, but a nightmare to actually navigate. They look amazing, but maybe not so user-friendly.
Yeah, he's got a point there. Think about it. I'm sure you've all been in a building that has this grand facade, but then inside, it's just a confusing maze of hallways.
Oh, absolutely. Or the elevator's impossible to find.
Exactly. And, a lot of those frustrations come from designs that put aesthetics over functionality.
It's like those restaurants that are all about being Instagrammable.
Yeah.
But the seating is actually terrible.
Yes. Exactly. And that's what the international style was reacting against. It was about stripping away the unnecessary stuff and focusing on what mattered. Light, flow, durable materials.
Yeah.
It's a whole new way of approaching architecture, really.
And it makes sense that this new way of thinking would really resonate in Tel Aviv, this city being built, essentially from scratch, with this very modernist vision.
Yeah.
But it's not like Tel Aviv just became a copycat of all these European cities that were all about this international style, right? It took those ideas and kind of gave them its own spin.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they took the basic principles, keep it functional, clean lines, no unnecessary decorations, but then they made it work for Tel Aviv's specific climate, their culture, that sort of thing.
Okay, so how did they actually do that? What were some of the Tel Aviv twists?
Well, think about those classic Tel Aviv streets you see in pictures. Nissim was talking about those balconies, the minimalist ones, especially those kind of rounded ones you see on corners a lot.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Right. And those weren't just for style. They actually maximized light and airflow, which is huge in a city that gets as hot as Tel Aviv.
And it makes the streets feel so open, like everyone's got a front row seat to the city.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a whole thing about shade. I mean, you've got to have shade. Big overhangs, windows placed just right. All of that was designed to keep those apartments bearable in the summer.
So it's just as much about surviving the heat as it was about looking cool.
Exactly. It's a great example of how sometimes limitations can actually make things more creative. And speaking of which, remember Liat was saying something about those regulations about using Jerusalem stone on buildings?
Oh, yeah. How her dad was saying some of those rules, the ones set up during the British Mandate, they're still around today.
I know, right? Talk about rules that have stuck around. But it's interesting, isn't it? The British were trying to make the city look more unified with all that Jerusalem stone, but they accidentally sparked this whole debate about old styles versus new ones, and that's still a big part of Tel Aviv's architecture, even now.
It makes you wonder, what choices we're making now that will shape the city for years to come.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to shift gears just a bit. What are some of the lasting impacts of this architectural journey Tel Aviv's been on? What can we learn from it, even if we're not architects or living in Israel or anything?
Well, just look around. A lot of the international styles ideas, the focus on function, keeping things minimal, that's everywhere in modern architecture. Open floor plans, lots of natural light. We take that for granted now, but
Yeah, we totally do. And they're still like the most sought after features.
they really are. But I think even more than that, Tel Aviv reminds us that good architecture isn't just about how things look, it's got to be about people. It's about understanding their needs, the environment they're in, and how design can bring those two things together.
It's about taking something global and making it local, in a way. Kind of like what Liet's doing with her dad's stories, taking these architectural tales and bringing them to a new generation online.
Exactly. It all comes back around. Just like the international style had to change and adapt to really work in Tel Aviv, every generation finds its own way to connect, to be creative, to leave their mark.
So next time you're walking around, take a look at the buildings around you. What will they say about us? What will people uncover about our architectural choices when they do a deep dive years from now?